Some of y'all thinking I must have lost it. I sold my Sony a6600 for the Sony ZV-E10, the same camera that you're looking at right now that honestly, if I put side by side with the a6600, looks the exact same. But I just want to dive into some of the specs that are very similar and honestly exact, and what went into this decision, and not that if you should do it, but if it might be the right move for you as well, or if not. So here's some of the similar settings between the Sony ZV-E10 and the Sony a6600. A max resolution of 4K 30 frames per second, 1080p 120 frames per second, 422 8-bit via HDMI, eye autofocus in photo and video mode, microphone port, the glorious headphone port, which I adore, unlimited recording whether you're in 1080p or in 4K video modes, HLG, S-Log2, S-Log3, and a ton of other things. Now, these are some of my major wants that I've wanted for a really long time, even back when I was with Canon, that made me switch to Sony. But there's really only a few differences that the a6600 has, because it is the older camera that was supposed to be the top of the APS-C line that the ZV-E10 does not. Most notably is the fully articulating screen on the ZV-E10, whereas the a6600 has that kind of quirky go up the roller coaster shaft cranking system thing. At least that's how it felt. So that was a little weird, but we had it on the a6400. It made its way to the a6600. Introducing weather sealing and moisture resistance, but not fully weather sealing the body. So it's a little bit of a moisture resistance, but not a big deal. Of course, one of the biggest factors being IBIS, or that in-body image stabilization. So they're actually the stabilization on the sensor. And then of course the FZ100 battery, that is the much bigger, way better Sony battery. But was that enough to hold me to this camera that I've loved since 2019? And when I kept shooting with the camera more and more, the answer wind up being no. I honestly started to look not negatively, but just not want to use the a6600 as much compared to the ZV-E10. Because when I'm doing a tutorial and I have the camera to the side of me, similar to when I have my ZV-1, I can sit with the camera right next to me if I'm doing a tutorial and I'm like showing you this, pull the screen out to the side and just look and be able to see it. Whereas when the screen only tilts, that's way harder to do. This is not an issue for everybody, and this is something that really, unless you're needing to do some kind of a shot like that and you're solo creating, then you'll run into those issues. Is the FZ100 battery to the FW50 battery comparison a huge factor for me? Yes and no at the same time. Meaning when you are just taking that camera out and about, the FZ100 battery is the bee's knees Hall of Fame. I wish in a way it had made its way to the ZV-E10, but I'm also not mad at having smaller batteries that are lighter weight. And I honestly only ever carry and invest in one other battery, no matter if that one is considered good or bad. So the FW50 battery is extremely small and in itself is lightweight. I'm not upset about that. The ZV-1 also has a really small battery where most people are like, dang, I wish I could shoot longer than an hour, longer than 2 hours. Now, if you're recording videos, you can get somewhere upwards of 2 hours recording time frame if you're doing 1080p, and a little bit less than that if you're doing 4K. That's never been an issue for me, for the fact that if I am inside and I'm doing something like this where I'm making several videos, I'm going to be hooked up to an AC connection, or I'm going to connect into my battery bank. Now, if I'm traveling, I'm not wanting to necessarily take a bunch of extra cables and stuff. So it's only two systems that I'll use for extended battery life: the battery bank and my K-Star adapter, or whatever kind of battery charger that you want to use that has one other Sony branded battery. Do I have other batteries? Yes, because just in the process of having multiple cameras that have the FW50 battery, I have more than just one or two. But when I'm traveling, I literally only carry one other battery and one as a spare backup in a kit that I'll talk about in a future video, just in case I am doing something for whatever reason, literally forget an SD card and battery, like it's my backup kit. But I don't ever have to use that extra battery because I'm running stuff off of a battery bank. It's kind of like if you're, and this is starting to get frustrating, old enough, like we're not that old, but we are old enough that if you remember when we had flip phones, you would get extra batteries, or you would go to your local store and get extra batteries for your phone. But then smartphones got better and better, and we just got into this recharging game. So you probably already have a battery bank anyway. Now, that's the last time I'm gonna ever say this on this channel. Anybody else that say something about age, I'm deleting your comment. We're not old. And matter of fact, as a side note, I have a frustration that the St. Louis History Museum has CDs and iPod originals like it's history. We're not that old. Mini rant over. Now, the fact that the Sony ZV-E10 had a headphone port, you would get the internal charging. You are getting a USB-C port instead of a USB micro. These little differences start to make things that much better. Now, it's a lot of features and bonuses that you get on the ZV-E10 that do not exist on the a6600, including the product showcase mode, the USB-C updated port, which makes a difference in just a smidge. I'll come back to why. In addition to USB-C live streaming. Now, the updated port makes a few things possible. If you're familiar or even have heard of the Fuji X-T100 and X-T200 and even the Fuji X-T30 cameras, more specifically that last one, those cameras have the ability through the USB-C port to have audio and video. Now, what I found most fascinating when the ZV-1 came out and I finally pulled the trigger on this one was the fact that when you're doing USB-C live streaming for traveling and stuff, so you don't have to carry capture cards, you get audio and video via USB. I've never seen any other brands do this. Maybe if you have one, let me know in the comments if your camera can do it. So with my Sony cameras, I now can do that. The a6600 doesn't have that, which means if I want to live stream, I need a program on a computer or I need to bring a capture card. And I don't want to have to resort to those things. I want to have options. Now, you would think it's funny and goofy, but the product showcase mode is legit. That makes it to the top of the Bee's Knees Hall of Fame, in my opinion, simply because you don't have to do anything but hit a button. Now, for some people, the bokeh button is another one of those things, but I do manual settings, so that doesn't help me a ton, but it is a fun option. So even though most people only think about the trade-offs that you get with the product showcase mode or the bokeh button or the different screen and the USB live streaming, those are literally just only a couple. Here's what you get in the ZV-E10 that you don't have with the a6600. The USB-C port, USB live streaming, digital stabilization options in the camera, as well as the fourth thing, which is access to Sony Catalyst browser that you don't have except on the Sony ZV-E10, which is the literal only APS-C camera that can use this actual program, which is baffling to me. A record tally light and screen emphasis when you're recording, a zoom rocker, autofocus transition speed controls, improved internal microphones, product showcase mode. And then for me personally, some extra bonuses is the lighter body as well as the ZV-1 design with having the button instead of the actual dial. Now, depending on what kind of creator you are or just your personal preferences, some people saw the button as frustrating. I was not among those crowds because just literally switching between the three most common modes that I literally use all the time from when I'm vlogging and I want to do a time lapse or trying to get a quick slow motion shot, I can quickly switch to that. If I want to switch to a photo mode for a thumbnail, I can do that. And if I'm going to be recording or doing a live stream, I can do that. Every other mode becomes something else that I can just honestly access through the function button and the quick menu screen if I need it. But I don't need all that extra stuff and then they're all in different places on the dial. It just didn't make sense to me. The button does. Now, it's a little controversial with the zoom rocker. Some people don't like it because they're not trying to zoom in or they don't want to use that function at all. And you do get additional features and things like that on the a6600 in the sense that you do have a few more customization buttons, but you don't have to worry about the zoom rocker either if you don't want to. For me, that adds it to the Bee's Knees Hall of Fame because I'm using clear image zoom a lot of the time when I'm using a prime lens like the Sigma 16, but I want to zoom in. I don't want to do that necessarily in editing. We can just do that on the sensor and it's way, way crispier. So the IBIS, bigger battery, slightly, weather resistance, not necessarily complete weather shielding on the a6600. And then the IBIS, which if we're being very honest, is not Sony's strong suit in their APS-C. And then all of these cameras have what is called rolling shutter, which when it's scanning the sensor from the bottom to the top, the reason why you have the jello is because the way that the sensor is scanning, it's just not fast. That used to be an issue you're seeing like on some of everybody's cameras, so it was no big deal. But now it kind of is very long in the tooth in the sense that Sony needs to update this whole lineup now with the a6100 discontinued, a6000, 63, 6500 for the most part discontinued, a6400 a solid live streaming photo camera for real, and the a6600 at $1398 completely overpriced because the ZV-E10 literally exists. I'm not sure what they're going to do about this whole kerfuffle with the lineup in the Sony cameras, because when you honestly look at it, the ZV-E10 is a great start. There's a rumor of another kind of a ZV camera body coming out. I think they really need to get a new sensor. They need some better IBIS. They need to fix active stabilization, because that jumping rave party popping situation happening in the corners, when you accidentally forget that you're in there and you do the whole vlog in it, so frustrating. Like, you just don't even know. Or maybe you do. So if you had between the a6600 and the Sony ZV-E10, which would you choose? Would you go with the ZV-E10 like I did, or would you stick with an a6600 just because maybe the body design is different or something like that? Now, I put together my dream list of features that I would love to see on a Sony APS-C camera. If you're into that kind of stuff, make sure you check out the video on the screen, or if you just picked up a brand new ZV-E10, there's another video where I did and I walked you through all of the settings. Make sure you check on that video. It's going to help you optimize your camera for video.